Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healthcare Inspired Podcast. My name is Jennifer McNamara, and we are here live. We are here for season 4 of the Healthcare Inspired Podcast, and we are excited to be here with you all today. I'm going to welcome my co host to the stage, Maya Turner. Oh my goodness, I'm having connection issues. Oh, lost it. There we go. Oh, those issues. Oh my goodness. Can you hear me okay, girl?
Yes.
I'm having quite the issue with the internet today, so let's kick this off. So, season 4 is here. We're here to talk about compliance, and oh my goodness, are you excited?
I think compliance is the backbone of many coders, but I'm especially excited because we get to talk about it every day with my friend.
Yay! I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So, yes, I do love compliance, and we wanted to make this entire season about compliance. So, when we think about, oh my goodness, what we do every day, or when we think about if you're a coder, you're a biller, auditor, you're a physician, compliance is really should be a part of your everyday focus. When you think about every patient that comes in the room, think about compliance. What do I need to know to make sure I take care of them and that there are no mistakes? We're dealing with people's lives here. Or when we think about the people at the check-in counter, those that are taking that data in, which we know is the most important job in the office, pretty much. When
Yeah.
that first impression, what does that look like for them? What are some of the tasks that they have to, of course, take on every day that they have to consider? Okay, this needs to be done compliantly. I have to know this, and then at the same time, I have to know this and this. So we need to make sure that, of course, we're educating our
Yeah.
staff as to what compliance really is. So, Maya, what does compliance mean to you?
Compliance is in intertwined with everything that we do as coders in a healthcare organization, even outside of healthcare organizations. I mean, think about when you got your mortgage, right? There are certain things that they have to do in order to make sure that that money should come to you and you've met the requirements by obligation, by means of compliance. And they've done their due diligence to make sure that you can afford that mortgage or what have you. And all of that comes into play. So, and in the simplest way, compliance is rules in order to negate every day, right? If you pass a red light, you're non-compliance because you failed to obey the traffic law when it was red. So it's intertwined in every the part of our lives. I just think that when we have a focused area of compliance, it's where the education specifically needs to be catered to the scope of what your daily job is. As coders, as billers and compliance, we we have to carefully interchange everything to make sure that we're doing everything the right way. And if it's not the right way, we need to say something about it and educate about why it's wrong and what steps they can do to prevent, it happening again.
Exactly. And everybody plays a part in compliance. It doesn't matter who you are in the organization. And so let's talk about what, of course, we're here to talk about is setting the tone for a compliance culture because we want there to be a culture in your organization. And a culture is everything that you absorb, right? So if you think about culture in general, if you belong to a certain culture, you have a cultural background, everything that you are is based on that culture. And so when we think about right and wrong, we all were built with that need to know what's right and wrong. That's why when something is wrong, it bothers us.
Right.
If somebody basically lies to us or is untruthful, it bothers us. Um,
Right.
so if we see something going wrong and it doesn't bother us, then there may be a problem. Why doesn't that
Or
bother?
you're expecting it and it doesn't bother you either anyway.
Exactly, right? So, what does your compliance culture look like? That's what I want to know. I want to know what your compliance culture looks like. So, if you're here listening live, drop it in the chat for us. We'd love to hear what your compliance culture looks like, or if you see problems in the compliance culture that you have or you have in the past. What are some of the issues that you face that you consider, of course, a toxic culture? Because we want to get that information out because so many are dealing with that. We want to know what you're dealing with so we can help you. So think about respect, first of all. The first thing I want to talk about is respect for rules and processes. Respect the process. And I know sometimes when I'm trying to get through a task, I was like, I would just like to be on the other side of this because I know that the process to get there is going to be painful. It's a painful process, but we have to have what respect for the process.
Hmm.
Um, and when you think about I think with the connection between a physician and a coder, for instance, um,
Hmm.
or even those that work at the front desk and the physicians, what is the culture like? Do they even have communication with the physician in the practice? Are they kept at a distance? Those people up front are the ones that are, like we said before, setting the tone for patients actually wanting to come back. So, shouldn't the physicians want to know how their front office staff is communicating on behalf of them as the physician owner of the practice? If they're the owner of the practice, their reputation's at stake, right?
Right, right, right. I mean, I also think that when you're communication is about understanding each person's position, right? When there is an opinion, right? And that opinion needs to be communicated between whoever is holding that position and whoever that other person is that can change a or hear what a problem is, right? And so when we think about the role of the positioning, Jen, we've talked about this a million times. Everybody has to understand what their position is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the physician may be, the star player of the team, but he's still a part of the team to negate the process of patient satisfaction, patient treatment. So we have to understand and respect each other's roles and create an environment and a demeanor that is welcoming for opinions and welcoming for correction. Sometimes the physician is the one man show. He's the office, he's the manager,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody is listening to what they have to say. But do they know everything? I don't think they do. And they should respect everything that's related to that. I'm just saying. So you got to respect the roles of the people who you've employed or as part of the team as part of the compliance process.
Right. And have an open conversation. If you think you heard something at a conference, or you heard something from a colleague that as a physician that told you this is how we do things, that may be the way they do things, but there may be other factors you weren't told that make them do that process. But for instance, in your organization, you might be missing a piece, and if you talk to your office manager, you talk to your coders and billers, they may be able to clarify to you why we can't do things that way. There may be some factor that you're not aware of. So whenever you come maybe to your staff and say, we're doing it this way because I heard this at a conference, just make sure you get all the facts before you make a decision for your organization. Um,
Absolutely.
and we need to be able to be comfortable speaking up. If we see something, say something, as has been said before. We need to be able to say something. Now, there was a case it was a few months ago that came across HHS.gov, the Health and Human Services, the OIG, Office of Inspector General have. It was one that kind of just hit me and threw me for a loop where everybody was involved in this, even the coders. And so it kind of just like hit me hard because I thought I could never stand by and see something wrong and not say something. That's just me personally. I
Right.
have the ethical makeup. I can't do that. I
Right.
can't. let that happen. So at some point you have to speak up, and if you see something, you don't say something, you're part of the problem too. You could be liable if you don't
Right.
say something.
Sorry about that. Hold on.
Love those doggies. They get excited. So then you talked about something earlier, Maya, when you mentioned making mistakes, and so mistakes do happen, but do we learn from them? And do we try not to blame others, right? We don't want to have that as our mantra. Oh,
Yeah.
well, it's their fault. I don't have anything to do with this. So
Right.
let's practice the no blame game for a minute. Let's talk about these mistakes. It's human to type in something wrong, the wrong digit, or the wrong date of birth, wrong year, which can cause issues. We know with Medicare, it's not going to go through if it doesn't match what they have on their end, or most
Right.
payers, right?
Right.
So if the information about the patient doesn't get to the payer correctly, what's going to happen to the claim?
It's going to get denied.
Rejected, right? I mean, like, it's not going to go anywhere for that
Right.
kind of information. They can't find the patient in their system, so they don't know who to pay.
Right.
Um, who to pay for, like which
Right.
plan or which person they're paying this for. So again, yeah, they're going to want to know that. That's a simple mistake that could happen, but it could create larger issues. Um, if for some reason something happens and a claim gets denied and we have to write off, we get so far and we don't actually fix it in time, and it gets to the point we have to write it off. Let's say it's a $5,000 claim. It can be super easy to point the finger and say it's this person that did it. It's their fault. It's their fault. The physician
Hmm.
didn't document correctly. I sent 6 emails asking for correction, never got a response. So again, it doesn't do any good to blame others. All you can do is, take what's happened and learn from it. And maybe you do find out that one individual may have been responsible or was a multiple factor situation. Just learn from it as an organization. Don't decide, okay, I'm going to fire that person because they cost me $5,000. I've been in organizations where they've done that. Uh, the physician decides just to fire the front staff because he doesn't like the way they're doing things. Like, that's a childish response. So I have a problem with this lack of teamwork that creates more issues, because if you can't hold on to your staff or you don't give this toxic culture, how do you foresee the next set of staff reacting if you don't change your process? Is it going to keep happening? Where
You know,
is the line going to be drawn?
I mean, and I'll also say that if you find yourself in a position or an organization where there's high turnover and high
Mm-hmm.
AR, that's a problem.
Yes.
High turnover and high AR means that someone is not trained well, or they aren't given the devices in order to do the job, and there is no learning curve to do the job. So then, who's to blame? Then you got to look at the common denominator. If you have a high turnover and the one person is still there, but everybody else is leaving, then where does the needle stop? Right. So I think, in the no blame game, we have to have a culture of communication. We have a culture of accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's accountable for what? And then, from a compliance perspective, create policies and procedures that's related to AR, the protocol to talk to this person or talk to
Mm-hmm.
that person. You know, the pointing the finger is not going to do anything but give your finger exercises. And we really just need to
Right,
change
exactly.
the mindset of the game, and be accountable for what we do, what we know how to do. And if we don't know how to do something, say something. That's it.
Exactly. Accountability, ladies and gentlemen. Shared responsibility. Everyone from the front desk to the coders to the physicians to the office manager, even the patient, guys. We have to sometimes hold the patients accountable for not giving us the information we need. And if they call and they're upset, let's get to the bottom of what happened before we start blaming people. Oh, let me find the person responsible for that. Like, just try to figure it out for yourself. You're the one talking to the patient. Don't make them feel like you're going to pass them around to all these people. Now, you may have to put them on hold and say, I need to investigate this. Can you hold for a minute? And then don't wait too long. If it's going to take longer, make sure that you let them know this is going to take more research. Can I call you back? There's a way that you answer the phone, that you communicate with patients so they don't feel ignored. But again, it may be their fault too. So you don't want to just go blame somebody. Oh, this is something that the doctor did. I'll have to ask him to call you back. Like, don't blame somebody else in the office until you know what's going on.
Right.
It's horrible sounding to a patient. That makes them feel that you're in a toxic organization, and they don't want to be a part of that either. So again,
Right.
don't put that vibe out in the world.
I mean, patients don't want to be involved in a toxic culture either. They're not coming back if they see that that's that kind of attitude. So, I mean,
Yeah,
we got to use some logic here. I mean, if you got treated bad at a restaurant by a waiter, are you gonna go back there to eat? No. Just saying.
absolutely. And one of my favorite words these days is trust. And so I think trust and accountability go hand in hand. When you trust someone, you're not going to be afraid to speak up and tell them what you need from them. Or maybe if you feel like there's a certain process that needs change, you're going to trust that the other person you're talking to also wants what's good for the organization. So you're going to trust that you say, this needs to get done. And of course, you have a chain of command. So you take it to your supervisor. You trust that they
Absolutely.
will take it from there and they will get it
Hmm.
done and handle it properly because that's their response, that's their job. And you want to stay in your lane. You don't want to exit the lane because it could be damaging to you if you go out of your lane, right? Think of a physical car lane. If you get out of your lane and at the wrong moment, you could get in an accident. So if you step out of your lane in the organization, it can cause harm to you or the organization. So be very
Absolutely.
careful about that. Trust people around you because that is what we're supposed to do. If you can't trust them, then maybe there's a problem. Then maybe you do need to go to another organization where you can trust the people you work with. I mean, you're with these people every day. You can't trust them, then you probably aren't going to benefit yourself or anybody else.
Absolutely. That's so true. I mean, just, just like when you have, good friends, right? You can't tell everybody everything, right? Especially the friend that can't hold water, right? If they can't hold water, why would you speak to them in that regard? And we have that one friend that tells everything. So you're like, I love you, but I can't tell you nothing because you can't. You
I love it. I love it.
it's just one of those things where you have to create a culture of accountability, communication. You have to be able to trust the people that you work around in order to create a sense of security, right? When you trust somebody, you're secure in what their
Yeah.
actions are going to be based upon, whatever is going on. So I, that's a strong word there, Jen. Trust, trust. Yes.
Yes, it really is. Well, let's take a few minutes now and just start talking about what we can personally do, the actions we take every day to build that compliance culture. Because again, if we're all doing it, that culture is going to develop naturally. Now,
Yeah.
we do want our those in leadership to set the tone as an example, but everyone in the organization can set an example on their own and with the things they do. So documentation accuracy, first of all, what we put down in documentation about a patient lives with them the rest of their life. So
Yes.
we want to make sure that we're taking that care. If you
Mhm.
see something that is inaccurate or is not the complete picture and you have more information that could um, help elaborate on that for the patient's sake, then by all means speak up. Have those open conversations. Following procedures. When we understand there's a new code or there is a new regulation that is coming, do we keep it to ourselves? Do we
Yes.
keep it to ourselves? Do we not share it with others? In making sure that we're not thinking, oh, well, they'll figure it out. So these are actions we take every day that we own and we take the action. We're waiting for somebody else to take the action.
Right. Yeah, I think I just came up with a coin. Compliance is not playing a poker game. You can't have a
Mm-mm.
poker face.
No, no, no.
you have to be transparent. Like, you got it. Like, unlike poker, you have to lay all your cards on the table, right? You can't just, when poker, you're just like looking at everybody and hoping that, they don't tell, what they have or their reaction. But, at the end of the day, it's all about being transparency, right?
Mm.
Transparency and being accountable when there is an issue. So
Yeah.
I relish um, people that I can be
Yeah.
transparent with, and that I'm able to trust them and to be, accountable for what I've done wrong, and be able to own what you've done wrong, and be acceptable for change or what needs to be changed, and in order to make it right. I mean,
I love
I
it.
think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right?
100%. Maya, I just feel so good about this season, season 4, on the compliance connection, because I think we're just missing so much of humanity and what makes relationships work. And we need relationships to work in healthcare. Patients deserve it. We deserve it
Yeah,
as patients ourselves. And if we are in those types of organizations, we need to realize the responsibility we have. And another responsibility we have is to keep the organization clean and above reproach. So we have to be able to report compliance issues. It's part of the compliance plan. It's one of the elements, being able to know that if something happens, you're going to report it. And it's not going to stay there with maybe your office manager or the compliance officer. It's going to be reported to the proper authorities when appropriate. So it's going to happen, guys. And if it's not happening, then you have a toxic culture or you have a breakdown in your compliance structure. So if
absolutely.
you feel as a staff member that your complaint or your notice of something wrong didn't get far enough, or you find that it wasn't, it's not um, against the law or against protocol for you to go above someone's head. I'm talking about whistleblowing, guys. I don't like that. I don't like that we have to do that, but it exists for a reason. You legally cannot be held liable for whistleblowing. You can't lose your job. So at the end of the day, if something is wrong and you know that it's not getting fixed, you have every right to blow that whistle, guys. Blow it. Blow it loud and clear. Make sure that
Yeah.
everyone can hear that
Be in an
whistle blowing.
island, be in an island with some palm trees with a whole bunch of water around you, so you enjoy what you're doing.
Oh my goodness. Just, yeah. I love it. So that's what we want to make very loud and clear, is that if you don't say something, this toxic culture that you might be in is going to continue. It's going to get more toxic until the organization suffers an unfortunate event.
Yeah,
And and that toxicity level is going to reach its climax and it's just not going to be good. So just be aware of what can happen. All right. Let's talk about, on the positive note, let's talk about what I like to promote is collaboration. I love collaboration. And I think
yes,
what we're missing is this collaboration between organizations. Now,
yes.
what does it mean to collaborate, Maya?
It means to work poetically with
I
another
love it.
entity, with to work poetically with an entity that may not have the same structure as yours, but can benefit from each other by working on a specific subject matter
Mm-hmm.
or a project. I do believe that it is imperative in the healthcare culture, especially in healthcare departments, physician practices, to collaborate by communicating responsibilities and things of that nature. So
Mm-hmm.
I I think collaboration is key in this day and age, because um, I don't think that there can be much accomplished when you don't have everything and you know somebody else that does. It's almost making the balance to get something done, because someone has the resources that you may not, or vice versa. But if you can help each other to get it done, then that makes it a beautiful thing, and everybody walks away happy. So
No, it's true. It's really true. Now, when I think about, in general, just the teams that naturally collaborate, right? So we
Yes.
think of the coders and the billers have to naturally collaborate, and even coders and the prior auth teams, if they're separated in their task in the office, some have to get with the coder, say, hey, can you help me make sure that I have all the codes I need for this authorization?
Absolutely.
The authorization teams have to communicate with sometimes the nurses, the clinical staff that are submitting the orders. They have to look at the order to make sure that they understand what is being ordered. And if they need clarification, which sometimes needs to happen because a lot of times your prior specialists, they know the codes that are generally submitted for a certain procedure, but maybe they want to make sure, okay, like, do you want me to add this? Do I need to possibly add this? Will this possibly happen? And that maybe will make the nurse or the clinical person think, oh, I probably should add that.
Yeah.
And so it's something that when you have those conversations, it might spark a necessary conversation that wouldn't have
Yes.
happened otherwise if you didn't
Yes.
collaborate.
Yes. Absolutely. And I've actually seen where the coders and the billers, when they coordinate with each other, you get so much more accomplished. You have less AR, right? And I've seen, like, I've been a part of my organization where they had a whole bunch of denials. They didn't know what the denials were. It turns out it was a payer policy that they didn't look at. And when I looked at the documentation, it was supported. They appended the appropriate modifier and everything got done. But it's about communication, right? And the
Yeah,
collaboration that is a result of that communication. And then poetically working
right.
together to prevent it from happening again. Yeah.
Right. And, some physicians still use transcriptionists. It still happens. And I had an instance once where there was a missing piece. And it literally said, I mean, it was for ENT and it had abbreviation for the procedure. I knew what it meant, but it was missing a word. So I was like, I know what he's trying to say, but I can't really use this because it needs to be complete, right? So I had to go back to the physician and say, can you go amend this documentation and have a more complete description of the procedure? And he goes, oh my goodness. He goes, I know I told the transcriptionist to fix that. So I didn't even know that he even used a transcriptionist. Like that was not even something that I knew. And
Well,
so,
that's
because I was new to the organization, I was like, oh, well, yeah, could you do that? So I mean, then that made me aware that was maybe one of the reasons, and I wasn't going to blame him. I just really needed that fix, and so then I learned something. I learned
Mhm.
something about how that documentation gets to me.
Right.
And
I mean,
so,
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was just saying, like, sometimes that is the issue. So, is that physician then good at communicating with the transcriptionist and vice versa? If that's an actual relationship that's still occurring in that organization, then maybe that needs to be looked at. So, where is the
Yeah,
breakdown? Where is the breakdown happening? And then maybe figure out ways you can fix that or improve those relationships.
agreed. Agreed. And even with transcription, and Lord knows I've had my share of transcription issues. you know, Sometimes a transcriptionist doesn't know why their writing or what they transcribe is important. So again, that collaboration with the physician, the accountability with the coder, making sure that they know why things are being transcribed and it actually means what the physician says. And
Mm-hmm.
typically, when there's an issue with transcription, the physician is supposed to fix it, and there should be an attestation to say what's happening. But I mean, in either case, you know, understanding each other's roles and being able to effectively communicate and be transparent when something is wrong is going to be key.
Right. And once you do find an issue, you can't, like I said, we said earlier, you can't be afraid to bring it up to the proper department that needs to know about it. Because if they keep doing the same thing over and over again without fixing it, and they find out later that someone knew about it, they're going to feel
Oh,
horrible. Like, why didn't you tell me?
right.
I didn't know this had happened. So I had a situation once where I like to give real examples where I was auditing the EMR. This is years ago, and we were trying to figure out what could have led to a lot of these billing issues or lack of payment. And I went deep into the system because it happened to be an EMR that I knew well. And so I went into the administrative settings and I looked, and then I noticed something that I wasn't even looking for. Sometimes You find things you're like, oh, I wish I had not seen that. But
I
you
can't
did
unsee it.
see
I
it.
can't unsee it.
Yes, can't see it. And you see it, and then you're like, well, I can't just sit here with this information. It would be unethical. It would be non-compliant. So basically, it was hard coded, or it was set up in the system that every single encounter for this physician would default to incident two. Every single encounter. Yeah. I like wanted to like crawl under the table and just forget I was no, I'm not here. And
No.
so thankfully, I mean, it didn't happen as like it wasn't utilized as often as I had feared because someone caught it when they were billing it. But there were several that we had to fix for a vision plan. It was an eye place, ophthalmology, and so it was the vision plans, and we called the vision plan. They said just resubmit everything, or we'll do it. They can you can do a special project. So it was fine, and that's the thing. It's like when you find a problem, don't sweep it under the rug. It's the worst thing you could do because the payers understand when things happen, especially with technology. Most of the time, they're like, "Please tell us, and we'll help you fix it," because they want their systems to be correct too.
Yeah.
That's the biggest mistake people make is thinking that they're going to go to jail for making mistakes.
Mm.
And it's when you try to cover up the mistakes that you get into hot water. And maybe there is going to be a big project to get it cleaned up, but it's so much better to be up front. I know we've used this illustration before, but when you get in trouble with your mama, right? It's always the
Yeah.
mama. It's like, why didn't you just come to me first? It would have been a
Yeah.
lot better for you. And I find out, on my own, it's going to be worse for you. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the illustration I always use with these situations. Don't be afraid to speak up. It's going to go way worse for you if they
Yeah.
find out that you didn't tell them and you knew
I mean,
about it.
but also think about your position. I think there has to be an empathetic approach too, right? Like, what would happen if it were me, right? What
Mm-hmm.
if that was your mom? What if that was your kid? What would happen if it would the situations were reversed and it resulted in your bill rather than another person's bill, right? So,
Right.
we I think it's always the passing the buck. And I
Yeah.
find with the auxiliary staff, because it's not just a specific type of auxiliary staff. It's always, well, it's not me. Well, that's not my job. Well, and you just like, well, how's it going to get fixed if nobody is addressing it? So that's just me.
Yeah. I understand. Well, our final discussion today will center around what I really want everyone to just repeat over and over in their minds from this point forward, guys. Just please keep saying this over and over. Compliance first. Compliance first. Compliance
Compliance
first.
first. Compliance.
Compliance first. Okay. So this is your mindset. This is your new mindset if it isn't already your mindset. So I think when we adopt that mindset, okay, I'm going to get in the office today. I'm going to unlock the door. I'm going to go and sit at my desk. I'm going to turn on my computer. I'm going to log in. And just something as simple as that. There are several things you can think about with compliance just with that step. Is
Yep.
someone over my shoulder watching me log in?
That's
Do I
it.
have my password written down somewhere and that's what I'm looking at? Like there's just little things like that for just that first step when you walk in the door that day, right?
Yep.
And you log in, right? You go to look up a chart. Is it a chart that you're supposed to be looking at? Do you have the business need to be in there?
Yep.
That's just something simple. So those are things you can think about every day for a compliance first mindset. And these are standard things that we all get taught in our compliance trainings. But guess what? They're also common sense, aren't they?
Yes.
Isn't it
Like
funny
watching your
how,
computer when you walk away.
yeah, isn't it funny how compliance is really just common sense? It's funny, right? Well, and I think too, back when I worked in the hospital, and you remember these days too, Maya. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I worked for an actual organization in the office. It was only like 5 or 6 years ago where I was actually working in the office. So I just remember, I always thought about everything that I did all the time, but I remember those in services, we called them, because I would just fly through them sometimes because they were all just common sense questions. And then
Yeah.
sometimes we had the tendency, right, to be like, oh, I have to go back and read that again. I don't think I caught everything. But then it's like, oh yeah, I get it. It's just it's consciousness of what's right and wrong. When I took my CCS exam with a HEMA, the compliance section was super easy for me because again, it was all common sense. I knew the regulations. I understood, the physician query part. I understood all that, um, and that was simple as well. But for the most part, compliance was the most easiest section of my exam because I lived it and I understood the standards. And some people just they don't because maybe it's not ingrained enough in their culture that this is the way we do things. This is the way things are done.
Right,
So
right.
keep that mindset as much as you can. If you're a leader, which we had leadership last season, be the one who sets the example, but encourage your staff. There's different ways you can make compliance fun. If you feel that it's just the most boring thing in the world, which sometimes it can be. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest. Compliance is not. It's not the most wonderful thing that we want to talk about. It's not like the most exciting thing, but make it fun. Encourage your team with maybe some really short videos that you spit out every week. Maybe there's a compliance blast video you create for your organization with a scenario that might be a little funny, but then also makes you think. And I guess some organizations have the phishing emails, and sometimes they're pretty funny that they think we can't recognize these. But again, those things are important and they keep us engaged. A lot of organizations are doing this because I've talked to them. They are putting out these short little videos of
Yeah,
compliance just every week in an email blast. There's these new technologies, guys, where you can actually send videos in your emails.
right.
And it's a great way for you to send out compliance blasts to your organization, and make it fun, make it engaging. So they want to participate in compliance initiatives.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And it's really interesting when we talk about the compliance culture and compliance first, right? You almost want to think about compliance and the person's experience in compliance, and then gradually train them. Like it's almost like a kid. When you're teaching kid like their ABCs, it's like the ABCs of compliance, right? So you gradually build up the more difficult things as they get older or as they progress. And I think when you're dealing with compliance, we're always thinking about what's the best way to approach it. Well, if they've never ever heard of it or thought about the platforms of which
Mhm.
compliance can be implemented, then start simple, and
Mhm.
then bring the more complex things as things progress in their knowledge and how they're learning, and then gauge how they're progressing. Think about the child whose first day is in school. Think about compliance school. Day one, you learn your ABCs. Day two, you learn cursive or whatever you decide not to learn, right? And then you progress from there and you make things more complex as you move forward. So when you think about compliance and compliance first, you know, don't try to put everything in one basket and make it complex to remember everything. Keep it
Mhm.
simple, but remember compliance is always first. And then if you have a question about it,
Yeah,
ask.
absolutely. And one of the most amazing things that you have at your disposal is the guidance from the OIG, the Office
Yeah.
of Inspector General. So I encourage you to jump on over their website because they have a great document that was released, of course, last year, and it's
Yeah.
amazing to think that we have all this great guidance now. And we will be, sprinkling in some of that guidance over this season. And remember, everyone, we are so excited, of course, that we have the um, compliance seminar, the Inspired Compliance Seminar, coming December 7th. You probably have seen a lot of course, marketing for that coming out. There's more coming. We are starting to promote our speakers. So you'll get to know who's going to be speaking at this event. This is a great way for you to send your staff to this conference to get your
Yes.
annual compliance training. All of our clients are sending their teams to this conference so that they can get their annual compliance training. Who better to listen to for a whole day of training than some of the leaders of compliance in the industry? You can't get these people in one room very often. So it's all going to be virtual. There will be CEUs for coders and, of course, those of you who are certified in compliance. And we just feel like it's important for everyone to attend. Everyone gets a recording of the event if they, of course, purchase a ticket. You can purchase a ticket and just get the virtual recordings if you don't want to attend with us, or you can attend with us and still get the recordings. We make it pretty easy, guys. There's no limit to, how much is going to benefit your organization. So please buy a ticket today. We're excited to have more information coming out soon. Of course, we'll have some of our speakers on the show over the next few months to kind of talk about what we're going to go through. So compliance tip number one, just to kind of give you a kind of shoot off for episode 2, we really want you to think about your compliance policies. So that's going to be what we're going to focus on for element number 1. Think about the policies that you have to create and make it simple, make it fun. Make the policies, live. Make them something that people want to read. Make them something that people enjoy looking at. Like, oh, I need to read the policy on this because I want to make sure I'm doing it right. And we'll talk next week, of course, about some of the policies that we do have to create. Because Maya and I, it's one of the things that we do together on our compliance auditing is we create policies for organizations. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out is that sometimes it can be daunting, but you have people out there who know how to create these policies. And if it's something daunting to your organization, you feel like it's something you can't handle, then reach out to us. We'd love to help you with that. And there's a lot of training out there, free training, of course, that you can get. But we encourage you to attend this conference. You are going to get a lot of resources that you really can't get anywhere else. So we encourage you to attend. And we thank you.
Compliance bill, by the way. Yeah.
Yes. So we thank you so much for attending our first episode of season 4, The Compliance Connection. We will talk to you all next